As a Black woman, it is incredibly hard to show up as your full self in professional and even in your personal relationships, especially when you have gotten really, really good at editing who you are. It's even harder when that edited version of yourself is constantly praised and rewarded. And what hurts the most is that deep down inside, you know that you would not be as successful as you are if you didn't have the gift of making other people comfortable. So let's talk about it. Welcome to Noted, a series where I unpack the things that keep us stuck and afraid from making bold changes. My name is Julia Gould, and I'm a published researcher. Each week, I pick a topic that has been showing up in my own life. I pull the research and try to find out what I can do about it. So if you're like me and you're curious about why you do what you do and what you can do differently, stick around. So last week, I was at work. I'm seated in an open area, and I get a phone call from my aunt. I knew it had to be an emergency because she usually doesn't call me during the day. So I instantly answered the phone and was like, "Hey, Auntie." And as I'm trying to find a quiet room to have the conversation, I'm talking to her on the way there. And it was only after the call ended that I realized that I had been speaking in my NTN dialect. And that was probably the first time that my coworkers heard me speak like that. So I was super curious about why the hell I was even so self-conscious about speaking my native language in front of these people. So I went to do some digging. And what I found, I'm still working through it, but here it goes. The first piece of research that I found that was really instrumental was work that was done by Dr. Kumea Shorter-Gooden, a trained psychologist, as well as Sharissa Jones. And the study that they did, which later became a book on the topic, was centered around Black women and their pervasive need to edit themselves or change themselves in order to meet societal standards. And I started reading the book and I had to put it down because I don't think I've ever heard my lived experience as a Black woman represented so well. So I want to read you an excerpt that rocked me. Here it goes. It says, "Black women are relentlessly pushed to serve and satisfy others and made to hide their true selves, to placate white colleagues, Black men, and other segments of the community. They shift to accommodate differences in class, as well as gender and ethnicity. From one moment to the next, they change their outward behavior, attitude, or tone, shifting white, then shifting Black, shifting corporate, shifting cool. And shifting has become such an integral part of a Black woman's behavior that some adopt an alternate pose or voice as easily as they blink or draw a breath, without thinking, without realizing that the emptiness that they feel and the roles they must play may be directly related." It's an amazing book. Before reading it, I always knew about the edited version of myself at work, but I never quite considered the edited version of myself in relationship with Black men. Now, I have been guilty of downplaying my intelligence and my achievements in relationship with Black men, but I didn't know that it was so common that it had a name. So the book is called Shifting, The Secret Lives of Black Women in America. I'll leave an affiliate link down below in case you want to check it out. And now I must mention that shifting happens across cultures. Latinos do it, Asians do it, we all do it to some degree. Heck, even white women do it. I overheard a colleague of mine talking about how self-conscious she was because it was her first time wearing her curly hair to work. So we all do it. In fact, there's research that dates back to the 1960s by child psychologist Donald Winnicott, and he coined the term false self. And it starts in childhood, and that false self is the person that we create in a world that demands our conformity. It's essentially the role that we create to get our needs met, in order to fit in order to belong. And playing this false version of ourselves requires that we take away all of the components that society deems undesirable. And there's even a name for it called an unwanted identity. Dr. Tamara Ferguson and even Brene Brown has done extensive research around shame and shame resiliency. And one of the items that their research has in common is the fact that this unwanted identity is a quintessential elicitor of our shame. So think about it. The things that make you unique, that make you you, is also something that has the power to elicit shame. So no wonder I was so self-conscious about speaking in my own dialect in front of my coworkers. And unsurprisingly, this shifting, this false self, of course it comes at a cost. Dr. Danielle Dickinson, she did a study of 100 Black women in STEM programs in predominantly white institutions. And what she found was in participants that exhibited a high level of identity shifting, they also tended to exhibit high levels of anxiety and depression. She mentioned, in the short term, identity shifting is a very adaptive strategy, right? We use it to get something that we want, whether it's acceptance or a job offer or a relationship, like we use it to get our needs met. However, in the long term, it is very detrimental to our sense of self, as well as our psychological well-being. And so now what, right? It's not like you can flip a switch and show up with your full self at work. I did a lot of digging, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to find any evidence-based research that provided a solution to this problem. Brene Brown, in her paper, provided some tips around ways that you can be more of yourself or be comfortable with the fact that you edit yourself. One of her tips that I do agree with is making sure that you have spaces, relationships that celebrate all of who you are. So it could be a close friendship, it could be an affinity group at work. It's just very important that you have a counterbalance for the type of editing that society requires. But in thinking about my own lived experience, I'm about 14 years into my career, and the person that I show up as today is definitely not the person that I was comfortable with showing up when I was just starting. For example, very early in my career, I was terrified of wearing my own hair to work. I will never forget the first day that I showed up without my wig. And I was scared as shit. Like, I never felt so raw in my life. But as I look back at that moment and other moments where I have found the courage to be myself, they all follow a very similar pattern. It usually starts with me being fed up. Eventually, I get tired of playing the game of pretending. And once I am fed up, that inspires me to act. It takes a whole lot of courage, sometimes some therapy, and a lot of vulnerability for me to get to a point where I'm comfortable showing a piece of myself that I have edited away. But once I do that, I have always been, and hopefully I will continue to be, pleasantly surprised in the reception that I receive. because pretending to show up as the person that others expect is very draining work. And I've already made up my mind that if I'm going to lose at this game of identity management, at least I'm going to lose as myself, okay? So hopefully one day I will get comfortable speaking in my native language. And if I don't get there, at least I can be a little bit less self-conscious about that component of me, hopefully. But we'll see how that goes. So today we've learned about shifting, what it is, why we do it, and hopefully a little bit of inspiration for what we can do differently next time. If you liked this episode, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. It helps me understand what topics and research areas are most useful for you so that I can bring you meaningful advice to help us navigate this thing we call life. And until next time, take care.